Alright, YouTube, I don't like going down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. Normally, I like to study conspiracy theories, some of them, but I consider most of them bunk. Now, as I said in my last video, there are various weird things going on with this Bergdahl bullshit that make me more than a little bit hesitant around the issue, but there is more. One thing that I left out to say before is that Mullah Omar, the leader of the Taliban, called this trade a victory. Um, the supposed enemy of the United States in Afghanistan, although we also have variously funded and armed them before, is calling this a victory even while Obama rants about stopping the Taliban and Afghanistan peace and stopping Islamofascism, and yet simultaneously funding Islamofascists and then going ahead with this deal that any sufficiently mentally advanced kindergartner could have told you is a bad idea. Well, 5 for 1, well, that doesn't seem quite even. You'd think that the dominant superpower would be able to get a better deal than this, but I digress from the issue because there's something far more pressing here and I think far more sinister. And I saw this, and the link is in the description to this clip. Quarter, Bergdahl at worst a traitor. Essentially, you have this veteran on CNN talking about how at best he's a deserter, this Bergdahl individual. At best, he deserted his post and just wandered off, and at worst, he's an outright traitor. However, that doesn't really matter to me. It's what was mentioned by the anchor himself near the beginning of this clip that's truly worrying. And that's that these emails that show that Bergdahl had become disaffected or radicalized or whatever you want to term it, came from Michael Hastings. Now, Michael Hastings, for those of you who don't know, because I know the public has a short attention span when it comes to these sorts of things, Michael Hastings was a journalist, and he was a headhunter, and he went after the government voraciously. He went after the CIA. He went after everyone he could get a hold of. He was a muckraker, a modern-day 1920s style muckraker. He was not endeared to or beloved by the government. He wasn't what you would consider a standard media personality who chooses a side and will support them and spout partisan bullshit. He didn't care. He went after everybody. He was then killed. And you can try to convince me that his death was an accident. I think the vast majority of people who saw the actual tape and studied that story in any detail realize he was assassinated. Because first, he said, well, I'm on the cusp of a major story. And then he talks to WikiLeaks' lawyer by phone a few hours before he dies and says, I'm in fear for my life. I think that the CIA or whatever is following me. And then he dies. And then the coroner has his body cremated against his family's wishes so that there's no remains other than powdered ash, just hours after he had died. And the engine block of this vehicle supposedly flew like 150 feet through the air inexplicably, which multiple people who have actually studied cars and studied physics have looked at and said, no, that can't happen unless there was some sort of explosive present that wouldn't normally be present in a car. So here's Hastings, who was probably whacked, probably assassinated. Let's just say probably, since we can't prove it outright. Who some time ago released these emails. And now you have this new scandal brewing that again is connected to the same Hastings fellow who died. In regards again to Afghanistan, which is variously described as a CIA front anyway, for the opium trade or for rare earth minerals or Halliburton or whatever you want to call it, and a million different people will give you a million different answers. But here his name magically appears again, connected to another scandal involving Obama. It's starting to look like Obama is maneuvering things. It's just like the SEAL team that, after they get bin Laden, they magically died too. It's starting to look like people are dropping like flies, specifically as a means to cover up mismanagement or corruption. It's not clear which. Regardless, though, something is rotten in Denmark here, and anyone who can't see that is being willfully blind and just displaying a normalcy bias of la la la, I can't hear you, nothing's going on, nothing's going wrong, sort of like a Jew living in Nazi Germany. saying, oh, I'm sure those tales about the camps aren't really true. That's basically what it sounds like to me. But look at the clip, see what he says, and then go Google Michael Hastings. That's all you have to do, and you will see that there is something far more sinister at work here. If I had to guess, and I know my guess might be wrong or it might be right, I would say it has something to do with Osama bin Laden. I would say it has to do with the fact that Benazir Bhutto, who was also assassinated, had come out years before she was killed, or I mean months before she was killed, and said, oh, to the best of my knowledge, Osama died in 2002. Well, I don't think the government would like it very much if they marched into Afghanistan only to find that their quarry was dead, and so they decided to secure the opium fields anyway and release some badly doctored videos depicting an Osama bin Laden that clearly wasn't the same individual. Okay, call me a conspiracy theorist, but I'm going to throw that out there. No, I'm not a 9/11 truther, by the way. I do believe that Osama was ultimately responsible for that. I think he had some backing by, the Saudi government and maybe the Israeli government because, of course, they would love the idea of, controlling that part of the world, but we won't get into that right away. The fact that Michael Hastings is being mentioned in something this outright mysterious really gets on my nerves because the Hastings story was clearly a tale, in my opinion, of assassination, probably by, if not our government, some other government that didn't like what he was doing. Here's a muckraker. He's not known to be a drunk or a drug addict. He's not known for flying around in inexpensive luxury cars, and then all of a sudden he receives this new luxury car out of the blue, and then suddenly immediately begins to run it down the road at 100 miles per hour. Then it explodes and he gets cremated against his family's wishes. I think not. I don't think that there's a logical explanation other than foul play involved there. So to hear him so prominently mentioned revolving around these emails regarding an individual who has now been taken back to the United States in exchange for high-level Taliban individuals seems very strange. I'm not sure the full extent to which this rabbit hole goes, but something is up here. If I suspected it before, I'm certain of it now. There is something larger happening currently. I think if this gets exposed, I expect it to be, the sort of scandal that rocks an entire nation. Could it have to do with Osama or Saddam or any of these other things or the NSA? Who knows and who fucking cares? Something is going on here when Hastings is mentioned. Hastings is not the sort of term that gets thrown around by news anchors on a regular basis. He was all but forgotten. The very fact that they're even bringing him up as though he ever existed, not simply pretending that he never did, is wowing me. Because quite clearly, people like Obama didn't want the issue discussed because he was burned and summarily buried over the family's objections for no apparent reason. It's weird. So when a deal is made by Obama or the White House in general or military brass or the CIA, whoever greenlighted this, and they did so with Obama's approval ultimately anyway, whoever greenlighted this knew they were getting a bad deal but probably felt they had no other option. That screams the Taliban is going to go public with information that the CIA or the military or Obama did not want them to go public with. That's what it ultimately sounds like to me. It's concerning to hear Hastings mentioned in this way because he's been long dead now. He's been scattered around the earth as ashes. Well, he was almost certainly assassinated. To anyone who watched the fucking video of him flying down the road and his car exploding in a fireball without hitting anything, it looks like a Bond movie sort of scene. What more can you say other than the Taliban is celebrating right now? Everyone's trying to wrap their heads around what the fuck was Obama thinking? How was this a good idea for his PR? The only thing that I can, unless Obama is truly retarded, which I'm hoping he's not, and I don't think he's completely retarded, the only thing I can think of that would have convinced him to do this deal is that he knew that something else would happen if he didn't that would be far more damaging to his PR. And I think he was forced into it and ultimately had no choice. And I think that the Taliban right now is having a little bit of a laugh at his expense, knowing that he can't actually come out and give the real explanation as to why this deal went through. The Taliban's actually laughing at Obama right now. It's hilarious. Not hilarious, the Taliban's nothing to screw with. The Taliban are a bunch of idiots. But still, I mean, it's funny to see how Obama seems to have been played by the Taliban at the moment. Maybe the Taliban was saying we're going to start fighting for the Russians if you don't shape up and release these prisoners, and here, you can have your traitor back. Maybe that's the case. That would be the least of all ills if that turns out to be the reasoning behind this actual release of Bergdahl. I mean, it's getting weirder. I half expect to wake up tomorrow and hear that it had to do with aliens or Nazis under Antarctica or something like that. Uh, it's screwy. It's really, honestly, it's a little bit like Watergate. This must be how people felt at the dawn of Watergate, or right after JFK was shot. Like, what the hell's going on here? Doesn't make any sense. That's about all. Again, link in the description. Watch it. You'd only have to watch the first minute because it clearly mentions Michael Hastings of Rolling Stone, the journalist that got, accidentally in his car. That's about all. Peace out.